Alright, welcome back to the channel everyone. We are busy going through my games from the Japan Chess Classic and Gambit Japan 2023. This is a little bit of a down memory lane because this is a tournament where I finally got a FIDE rating and I'm really happy to be sharing these games with you. Just to share what has happened up until this point. So in round 1 I took a bye because it was a Friday and I was still working. And in round 2 I faced my first opponent who was Hikaru Tamura, not be confused with Hikaru Nakamura. He was a 1900 rated FIDE player and I was really nervous. Our game ended up being an immense roller coaster, and you can check that out in the previous video. And now for round 3, which is our second game, we sat down across a younger man. He's probably around 13, maybe less, maybe 12. So as soon as you face the younger generation, you know you're in for a pain and a little bit of a problem. So I faced Shuma Endo, and he was rated just under 1800 FIDE at the time. And my biggest memory from the game was the fact that he played incredibly fast and seemed kind of bored, uninterested in the game. And yeah, just all around not a great experience to be playing this match. But let's get into exactly what happened, and maybe you'll understand a little bit more about my feelings from that as well. So in this one, I was white. At that time, I was still trying to figure out what to play against the King's Indian defense, which is what happened. So d4, 3, c4, g6. And after g6, I played f3. And this is actually the anti-Grunfeld line. Because if I play, for instance, over here, knight g3, then they can play there and we can enter a Grunfeld. And I was trying to avoid that at that time. I think I was trying to avoid playing the Grunfeld in that tournament. So I know f3, and I also know that this line can transpose into the King's Indian variation, which I was actually practicing at the time. So bishop g7, and then I play e4, and after they play d6, and I play my knight out, we are now in a Sämisch. So now we've avoided any chance of a Grunfeld, and we are in the Sämisch, which is a line that I had been working on. There's also the Sämisch in the Nimzo Indian, and so this whole f3 e4 thing seemed very interesting, and I was very excited to try it out in the tournament as well. So they castle, I play bishop e3. One of the bonuses of f3 is obviously that it stops the knight from jumping to g4, so you can put your bishop up, you can put your queen up, and you can make this battery, you can cast queenside, and you can throw all your pawns up the board and win, right? So that was kind of the general plan here. They play c5, and in this position, there are kind of a few moves, but the main one is actually to play knight g2, and then you would take back with your knight if you need to, and if you don't, this knight eventually might come out onto the king's side as part of your storm. There's also obviously the option to take, if that's the way you want to play, and in this line, you know, we're all just kind of playing a game. We win a pawn, but it's not actually a pawn that means too much. This position is still very equal and still totally within theory as well. But I decided to play the least popular one of the three main moves here, which is d5. And after the game, I remember the opponent, I remember Shuma telling me, oh, his coach tells him that there's two kinds of players, those who take the pawn and those who play d5, or those who don't move the pawn and those who play d5. And I thought, okay, I guess that's a thing. But definitely the point being that moving the pawn and not moving the pawn changes the structure of the game. And I specifically was looking to create a kingside attack with my pawns here, the g pawn, the h pawn. And so for that to work, I needed to lock down the center with d5. But it's not actually the best move in this specific variation, unfortunately. But I was just kind of trying to get the general position that I've been studying up on the board. So I play d5, they bring the other knight out, and this move actually, I would say this is just a slight inaccuracy, and I think the engine kind of terms it as such as well. The reason why this is not a great move is that white can now play knight h3 and black can't take it. So let's just say you move your knight somewhere, then I would move my knight back to f2, and now I am just so incredibly nicely set up to push these pawns forward whenever I'm ready for it, right? So playing, hang on, wait. Playing knight bd7 in this position is not the best move because when, okay, so let's just put something else on the board. Let's just a6. If I play knight h3 here, you can take it and you can ruin my king side, and then even if I castle, clearly my attack is not going to be going very far because I've got doubled h pawns. So a little bit of inaccuracy by my opponent, but unfortunately I wasn't really paying proper attention. I was focusing on the bishop and the queen and the castling, and I didn't play knight h3 in this position. Afterwards, I remember when analyzing it, I went, "Oh, I know this line. I should not this line, sorry, but I know this whole point about they can't take, so I should jump." So it was a bit unfortunate that I missed it. So I just went ahead and played queen d2, which apparently is also not the best move now because they make a mistake and I have a chance. So I make a mistake and now we're equal. Everyone's made an inaccuracy. Two wrongs make a right. Anyway, I'm continuing with my general plan, trying to push things up. I want a castle. I'm probably going to bring my knight out this way, I'm thinking. And black, just goes ahead and puts their knight on a very natural square. Now in this position, there's still lots of theory. The main move is bishop g5. You're trying to put some pressure on the backwards knight here. Um, but I just kind of straight went ahead with g4. So now at this point, the evaluation for the position is no longer really like clearly in my favor as white player, but it's still all equal, right? We still have a game. Maybe we're kind of dropping out of mainline theory, so black is also a little bit more on their own, and I'm just trying to make some interesting attack happen. I obviously have to be careful about this f-pawn. It is currently defended, but probably I have to bring my bishop up to defend it in some way before I move the knight. So I play g4 and they play h5, and oh man, I spent a little bit of time here. And this is really what my frustration was at that time with playing against the King's Indian defense, because I've never really found a great way to address it up until that point. And my ideas about creating my own kingside attack against the King's Indian defense just never seemed to work out. Even when I clearly got a good position, I don't really know exactly how to continue. And now with one move, although the engine says it's not the best move, I just see like, oh, black is just kind of defusing my whole plan. Like, what does it help me if I take their H pawn? But if I don't, then maybe they just push past and close up the position completely. I don't know. It's a very, very like tricky way to play if you're trying for a hard and fast attack, because you really put yourself in a position where if you don't get it, you feel like you have no options left. Instead of just playing a lot more kind of like a solid game and just letting the game develop by itself, if you're running out for the attack, you really put that expectation on yourself, and I was suffering from that a little bit this game. So after h5, I decided, all right, cool, I'm going to take the pawn. I'm not really sure what to do. And they take with their knight. And this is really nice for them now again, right? So I can come in here, but I have no pawn to really break through with. I know I can push this pawn once, but then, they jump, and then my bishop's kind of hanging, and I don't really know where it's supposed to go. Sorry, that's definitely not one of the moves. And although my h pawn was also just kind of sitting by itself, right? So if that knight doesn't move, which I can't really get rid of right now, because I have to defend this pawn to move this knight, to get this knight to g3 to oppose that knight, right? So it's just I was so frustrated. Anyway, so I decided, cool, I'll continue with my general plan, put that king over there. And this, unfortunately, is again not the best move, but I'm just trying to set my situation up. So black sees that, oh, okay, you've castled, but you also have kind of the wrong kind of pawn structure now on this side of the board. You can't really keep all of this satisfied, like safe, and if they give me a lot of time, right? If they give me the time to play this up, and then to push the pawn, then clearly I'm going to be very good because it's going to be opposite sides castling, and the semi-open files are all on their side of the board. But black doesn't have to give me that much time, and so they play f5 here, and they're starting to say, okay, well, you know what? If we're going to open things up, we're going to open it up with me at the helm. So black wants to decide how we're going to open things up here. My thinking at this point was, oh, I should probably just develop a bit more because the situation is getting kind of tough. And so I did. I put my bishop on e2, and this is not considered the best move. I was actually supposed to just play f4 here directly, but this is a move that I definitely did not consider at all. Because as I said, what am I doing with my dark square bishop then? Where's my attack going? So I pinched and hold myself into one way of thinking about the game, and it was very, very frustrating because I kept hitting my head against the wall on this. So I bring out my nice bishop, they take my pawn, and now in various variations for the King's Indian defense, this is actually a nice pawn to take back with a knight or a bishop, but specifically with a knight, especially if they've played e5, right? Because then this kind of becomes like an outpost, and you've got a really nice active piece in the middle of the board. Unfortunately, because I have this random like pawn hanging on well, sitting on f3, this situation doesn't work out that way. So I take back with my pawn, and now they bring up their light square bishop, and slowly but surely they're just how do I say? Um, they're guiding the game into a very unfortunate position for me. Black is playing some fairly easy moves, nothing incredibly crazy, but with one move, for instance, they've developed their light square bishop, they're opposing mine, they're also trying to take more control of this f3 square, my rook's sitting behind the bishop, my rooks aren't connected yet, my knight can't go up because the bishop takes control of it still, this knight is defending but not attacking anything, so clearly black just has more activity, more presence on the side of the board that I was trying to open up. Very frustrating. All right, so okay. Let me get my other rook out of the game, into the game here. I put my one rook out, and I'm thinking if these things trade off, at least I'll be able to kind of get control of the file maybe in a way, open up some space for my G rook to finally develop because I missed the chance to develop it earlier on. So they take my light square bishop. I take back with my queen because I need to defend my rook at this point. I also considered afterwards, oh, shouldn't I have done this? Oops, sorry. But clearly there was also the point that they could be able to take the c-pawn, and then this battery becomes just a massive liability. So I took back with the queen, then they take, then I take, and then they come here, and they're just slowly realizing this endgame situation where again, my knight is slightly less active, my kingside is still not properly developed, and they've got active knights very nicely placed, a very active dark square bishop, and they're just getting all the other pieces on their backline out. Alright, so I bring out my knight. This unfortunately also blocks my view of the c-pawn, but I was not sure what else to do here. I could maybe bring mine out this way, but I had a concern about this as well. Although now I don't remember why I didn't want to do that. Did I just overlook this as an option? No. Nope, I'm pretty sure I just overlooked this as an option. Anyway, I decided to play knight g2 instead. Then they took the c-pawn. And then I decided to play my bishop up to g5. So I don't want it to be traded off. So if for instance they took here, my queen was here, and I have to let it get traded off. I can't move it back. I can't move it forward. If I put it in front of my queen or here, then I'm just going backwards, and the problems just continue. So the other thing that I liked about this was that it protects the knight, which is now going to get under fire because of this fianchetto dark square bishop. So I put my bishop up, they trade off queens, and they put their rook behind the threatened pawn. So I have no advantage, and I'm down a pawn. And I have slightly less active pieces. Frustration. You also notice that this knight and this knight, although the front one isn't, or the right one isn't incredibly active, this is by far the most active piece, followed by this one. I wouldn't really call my rook a very active piece because there's nothing it can really do on this file as such. I own the file, but I can't exert any strong pressure on it, except maybe for this square here. Alright, so I decide my knight is defended, I can kick this front knight away, and indeed I do. At least that closes off the diagonal for a bit. And I can also go and attack a few things. I've got this angle, which might be very useful for me to try and get a piece that is very active, so in return I could maybe get something active. I'm not actually looking at taking the a-pawn because they would just put the rook there and then take my a-pawn. So anyway, black continues, no mercy, c4, and I decide to jump straight in to the back line because I can also help that pawn. I'm blocking up the file, and I can still get to e6, which is kind of my main goal, to be honest, to try and put my knight on e6 here. So they block up the file as well with their own knight. They're attacking my e-pawn now. I defend my e-pawn, but now my knight is obviously undefended, so I've got to be careful. They take the pawn, I take back, and they jump their own knight back, which attacks my dark square bishop. So a little bit unsure what to do here. I'm also aware that this knight is hanging, so if they take here, they can also take here afterwards. So I decide to drop back and defend my knight. And then they're still attacking it, and they're also attacking this backwards pawn, but they're also attacking my knight. So if I, for instance, play back here, they can sack their knight, and then after I take, they can take my knight in the front. So things are looking rough. I do that though because I don't really know what else to do, and black is just slowly but surely causing me problem after problem after problem. The opening attack I thought I had has gone to nothing, and ever since then black has just been dominating the game and kind of dictating the way that the flow goes. That is the word I was looking for earlier, dictating. Alright, so I don't want to trade off the two knights. I'd rather defend mine and trade off this way because I think at least I get to keep the dark square bishop, which seems pretty good. They bring in their knight, I take another pawn. So my a pawn is already gone, right? So at this point taking the a pawn doesn't matter so much. And here things go a little bit wrong again. So they're trading off the last rooks. And this looks kind of doable, right? I'm only down a pawn. They've got two knights and I've got a bishop. That's pretty good. But my mindset had been broken. I didn't know how to completely defend this, and my way of thinking about the game was just incorrect. So in comes the other knight, I bring in my king, I'm trying to figure out where to put all my pieces, I'm trying to trade off another knight, because then I think my sole bishop versus their knight would be pretty good. And black just continues to kind of press out and force me to make actions based on to react to their moves instead, right? So if they played something a bit slower, I'm not sure, maybe just moving their king up or pushing a backwards pawn or something, maybe I could have tried here to force a trade. But if they push the front pawn here, I have to double check at least if they take and I take back, is that the pawn I want to defend or not? What other move can I do that really helps me? Because if they take a pawn, I probably have to take back, right? So I jump my knight and they take it, and I think, yes, all right, cool. That was the right choice. Don't take that pawn, just take the knight off the board. And after I take with my king, apparently I'm losing. So this is an endgame kind of nuance. Really, the problem is that they can take here and then they can just slowly push in the situation. The only real difference with taking with the bishop here is that my king is the one that can come in. It's not that I have put my king on a specifically terrible square, it's just the fact that I have to get my king into the game and then knight currently stops these squares from being accessible and my bishop is covering the middle square. So that's kind of the unfortunate difference I didn't understand at the time. They take a pawn, they move their king up, and I'm actually kind of drawing here. Like this is still doable. The engine agrees, and I thought at the time, okay, I'm gonna hold, I'm gonna hold, but I just didn't know how to do it. Knight back, and immediately I'm losing. That was so frustrating. What I was supposed to do in position is just nothing. I was just supposed to push my bishop back, and then they can push a pawn, and I can just like move it back and forth. Maybe I go do this one. So I go sit my king in the front, and then sideways, and then just slowly kind of sit around, and I can take one of their pawns, and I'm always able to just keep their king from doing anything funny with the pawn there, and I'm also getting my king active. So this kind of line would have been perfect. Unfortunately, I decided to put my king opposite theirs, and now I'm losing. The reason I'm losing is because they can bring their knight in, and if I trade, I lose, because their king is already on the same rank as my solo pawn in the front, and if I don't trade, their king gets in. So I go sideways, they can jump their knight around, and now it's too late. Their knight is in the front and active, and their king can still come in, and my bishop can't come out on this diagonal anymore because my king's on top of it. So I'm just trying to keep everything safe. They block me from moving up on the side of the board, and they come in, and oh, the frustration. Now we're sitting at minus 10 or something, I think, at this point. I can stop this pawn for a little while, but I can't stop everything. So look at this, they even just sack it. Like, oh, I'll just take the pawn, no worries, because then they get to fork me, and unfortunately, like I said, their king is already infiltrated to a level where I can't stop them anymore. So I played on a few more moves just kind of because I was angry, I guess. I don't know. There was obviously no real reason for me to play anymore. I couldn't find a way to draw this, and so in this position I finally resigned. If we look at the engine analysis, you'll see that my my opening attack was never really a thing. It was all kind of semi-theory until it wasn't, and black was just great. So yes, they lost their advantage here and there, but mentally they had the advantage then for the entire game. Yeah, it was a very frustrating game for me to lose. I remember being quite unhappy with this, not just for losing, because losing obviously happens sometimes, but when you're facing an opponent who clearly doesn't think that you're worth their time, and they kind of prove you right where you can't put up a proper fight. I have white, I get to choose how we play, and I try and force this attack which isn't orchestrated correctly, and things go sideways. So very frustrating. This was now the end of round 3. And I'm sitting on 1.5 out of 3. 1.5 out of 3 is not the end of the world, right? So I have the buy point, and I've got a draw and a loss. So 1.5 out of 3 is still looking okay. But mentally, I was very unhappy. And so for that reason, I was really happy that this was the second game of the Saturday, which means that we were finished. So I could come home, I could relax, I could unwind a bit, and try and reset my head for the next day. So thank you very much for joining me for this round 3 game. It was a very, very tough struggle for me to get through, and it taught me a lot about kind of the mental side of my game, and also sitting across someone how I judge what the game might look like. And how much I kind of took in from the other person's behavior. Obviously too much, right? I got completely thrown off my own mental game just because the kid was looking so uninterested. So yeah, we live and we learn. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and stick around, and we will get into the Sunday round 4 game. Very fun indeed. Cool. See you around. Ciao, ciao.